Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Wisdom of the Sages is a chance to study wisdom literature of the yoga tradition, often overlooked in the yoga community, but we're here to put it to practice for the upgrading of our lives. And we're sitting with grief and sadness for everything that's going on out there, and extending empathy and our heart to everyone's going through so much suffering right now. There's a lot of pain out there, especially for the Black brothers and sisters who are dealing with so much, trying to feel what they feel. It's hard to feel what they feel. I'm a white male, can't feel it, but we can attempt to empathize, and we can stand with them. Want to read our statement, Kaustubha?
Sure. Feeling the need to share some words, share some thoughts on this. We posted something on our Instagram page that comes in like a series of panels, and we'll put it up on Facebook today as well. But I'll read it. It says, racial inequality in the United States is blatant, systematic, and historic, beginning with slavery and continuing up to the present day. The murder of George Floyd and the lynching of Ahmaud Arbery bring again to light this country's broken system of justice and highlight a sinister tradition of racism that remains a dark stain on any virtue that this nation may speak of. This shameful condition results from a lack of our own spiritual depth. These tragic events can serve as an impetus to again and again search our hearts for any egoistic blinders that may limit our fully embodying spiritual knowledge in all our thoughts, words, and actions. Spiritual knowledge must include the realization of the sacredness of all life and the respect for the rights and safety of all our sisters and brothers. May we draw from the sage advice of Dr. Martin Luther King, who spoke these words from the Capitol steps. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. May our studies, our sadhana, our prayers, and our meditations lift us to a place of always radiating that soul force. May our responses to injustice come from the mode of goodness, so that they may be lasting and bring forth the best results. May that higher consciousness give us the wisdom and courage to uproot all forms of destructive consciousness that continue to plague our nation. We felt the need to share that for many reasons. And part of it is that both Raghunath and I feel that, as Einstein said, that no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. That ultimately it's our level of consciousness that will, from which will flow how we behave, how we respond to others, how we govern ourselves, and so there's no more important work than addressing our consciousness. I'm I always think to this story that Radhanath Swami told, where he describes, this is in relation to how our lower consciousness results in our violence towards the earth. But I think the principle is the same, where he was sitting in the Delhi airport and he was approached by India's Union Minister of the Environment and Forest. And he said she approached him and they shared some friendly greetings, but then she kind of challenged him. And would you like to he mentions this passage in his book, The Journey Within, but he's also wrote it in some articles. Would you like to read from that, Raghunath? You're muted. Can you unmute him, Mara? Are you there?
There you go.
Okay.
Some people are trying to mute me. First of all, I wanted to say that I was guilty of being one of those persons that was, I tried to fight all this stuff with physical violence. I mean, the story of being in a band in the 80s, you'd always deal with white supremacists that actually would show up at our performances. And it was like a whole thing. You'd pull into a town. Are there going to be neo-Nazis there? And you never knew, because the punk scene attracted like far left anarchists and far right Nazis, skinheads. And, Parmananda can tell you the stories. Literally all over the world, we had to deal with this.
Yeah.
And I got punched in the face. I've got surrounded. One time we showed up in somewhere in the Netherlands to like 300 Nazis at a show. And it was like an ongoing thing that I met with, not in the highest way. And my entrance into spiritual life was to realize it can't be met. This quote you quoted, no problem can be solved on the same level of consciousness that was created, that this protest will take to the streets, but it will take to sometimes getting in somebody's face. But as I started to tie it in with my spiritual life, I realized activism is not just merely a protest. It's not like, okay, let's go out and protest, and then we come. It starts with how I live at home. It starts how I raise my children. It starts how I treat people. It starts how I treat my neighbor. And activism, I thought it was in that one form. We're going to get in their face today. And I realized that it's also in a lifestyle. It's not going to start today. It's going to start in a lifestyle of changing and wanting to get to the roots of the problem. This is diving into the spiritual roots of activism and seeing people beyond race. And then I wrote that first song of Shelter, a society based on bodies. We can't live in this world where we're just basing people on skin. Skin is like a glove. It's like a glove of a body. And I'm going to hate a person. This has to be sort of uprooted at the very core. Anyway, I just had to share that. Maharaj, he wrote something very poignant in this regard in the book. This was about, who was it? It was the Prime Minister? No.
The Prime Minister. It was the Union Minister for the Environment and Forest for India.
Okay. She was right to take me to task. Religions and spiritual leaders should be held accountable for environmental activism, not only because they have access to large communities and can influence votes, but because service is integral to religious and spiritual life. Reducing carbon emissions is important, but it is short-sighted if not coupled with reducing the toxic emissions from our heart. And that is something spiritual leaders are supposed to teach, and something all people, regardless of their beliefs, should practice. We should honor Mother Earth with gratitude. Otherwise, our spirituality may become hypocritical. The earth nourishes us with every necessity for prosperous life. When on a massive worldwide scale, we plunder her oil, destroy her forest, pollute her resources, torture and kill her animals, soak her with the blood of her children, exploit one another, and trample her with immorality, there will naturally be devastating consequences. We should honor our mother and respect all of her children as brothers and sisters. Otherwise, we may force her to react. Humanity has reached a critical crossroads. We have made monumental progress in technology, medicine, science, academics, and globalization. But if we do not use them with compassion, what will be our fate? And he ended up with making this one point. There's a dire need. The dire need is at hand to live as a dedicated instrument of God's love. This is poignant stuff. This is real stuff. It's not stepping away from the problem. It's getting serious about your whole life to change. Our life should be in activism. Our lifestyle should be as activists. And the best way to do it is start to change the way we behave to the world. Kaustubha.
Yeah, I think that we shouldn't make the mistake to think that reading Bhagavatam, practicing bhakti, practicing devotion, doing our meditation, that these are disconnected from how we respond to the world. They're essential to how we respond to the world, and people may respond to, again, whether it's racial inequality and violence, whether it's violence towards the earth, whether it's misogyny, whether it's a whole list, animal rights, a whole list of horrible injustices that continue to exist in our world. That our spiritual work is meant to prepare us to be introspective. It's meant to prepare us to be compassionate, to prepare us to be able to respond from a sattvic platform, where we're not just lashing out, but actually we can build solid, lasting, progressive change. And so my point is, let's not disconnect it. Let's understand that what we're doing here is to make us better people, is to make us people with deeper understanding. And it's only from that deeper understanding that we can solve these problems. That story about Raghunath Swami and how he was confronted by this woman, basically her point was, what are you Swamis doing? What, the earth as we speak is being so damaged. What are you doing about it? And his point was, we all have contributions to make, but if we cleaned all the rivers today, if we haven't cleaned our hearts, then we're going to very quickly pollute them again. And so spirituality, and when I say spirituality, I don't necessarily mean only from one particular tradition, but genuine spirituality from any tradition. It is that rising tide that lifts all boats. It is that rising tide that is going to address all of our problems, because it gets to the very root of the problem, which is ignorance, greed, selfishness. It's these things that we really have to root out of ourselves, that we have to become living examples of. And it's through Bhagavatam, it's through Gita, it's through and the genuine spiritual teachings of other traditions as well, that empower us to come to that place. So let's come together, and let's come to that place together, and let's radiate that soul force, that brings forth positive change. I'm from New York. My city right now is.
What's New York like? What's New York like? I'm living on a farm. I'm living on a dirt road in a farm. What's going on in New York? And I'm not online all day. I make it a point not to look at my phone too much, because you don't even know what channel it's going to bring you to and who's telling you what. So I try to make it, and it doesn't make me, I feel sometimes even any more aware. what's going on? What's going on out
Well,
there?
you know, in one sense, you're as well prepared because it's not like, you know, on my block, you know,
Right,
there's
it's
been
not.
rioting. But throughout the city, there's been rioting, and you know, of course, these things get blown up in the media too, and then that kind of further, you know, keeps the cycle going.
It keeps the cycle going.
You know,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of protests, but sometimes it's breaking out to violence, and you know, there's part of what our you know Bhagavatam teaches us is that there's a bodily attachment that we have to the place where we're from, and that's based on ignorance. But you know, there's also kind of like, you know, in my own heart, there's a love that I have for New York, and there's a love that I have for the people of New York. And it hurts, you know, it hurts to see to see or to think of us further, kind of losing touch, you know, allowing these systems to continue, you know, and then it breaking out in ways that we see that we can't solve them, through you know, through a clear thinking and through pure heartedness, you know, that we can't solve them. So I'm, you know, I'm feeling for my city, I'm feeling for my country, you know. I'm feeling for the people that have suffered this kind of oppression, and I'm, and you know, but I have faith, you know, I actually really do have faith. I really have faith in spirituality, and I have within me there's an optimism that the darkness that we're seeing is actually, you know, like, you know, this, as the saying goes, what is it? It's darkest before the dawn. You know, it can be, you know, it can be that humanity will look back at this time and say it was darkest before the dawn. And then we woke up, and then we realized that that we can't tolerate racial inequality, that we can't tolerate misogyny, that we can't tolerate the brutality that we inflict on the animals of this world, that we can't tolerate the way that the earth, that the rivers, that the oceans are being treated. I believe that spirituality can take us to that place, to turn that corner. And that's why, you know, even with our wisdom of the sages failing, which is, you know, in one sense is a relatively small group of people, you know, there's some thousands of people that listen every day. In one sense, that's a small group. In another sense, it's a big group, you know, and I think that there's so much that we could do, you know, there's so much that we can do if we get inspired, and we want to comfort that we will be inspired in so many ways to touch hearts, to change hearts. You know, I saw one of the things that one of the brighter spots that I've seen in the past week, since the protests have arisen, is to see police officers march hand in hand with the protesters. And
That gives a little hope.
And it does. And you know, it's going to take.
It stops the polarization, because it's extreme. And this,
you know,
it's just creating more hate.
And police officers have to step up and demand of themselves, of their own departments, that they're not going to tolerate this. And that's a start towards that. And I saw an excellent interview with a police officer who was, he was actually being told about the president's response to the protesting and the ways that he spoke about it. And he was asked for his opinion on it. But his point that he made is that we have to change hearts, right? Change their own hearts, and together we all have to change our hearts together. It's that change of heart, you know. It's that change of heart that spirituality, like nothing else, you know, spiritual truth, contemplating spiritual truth, genuine spiritual knowledge, and the example of genuine spiritualists who live as instruments of divine love, you know, whose love for God manifests, you know, in compassion and justice. I believe that our spiritual practices can take us there. And so how we take that and how we manifest that in the world is going to be different for everyone, you know. and how your heart calls you to respond and how your mind calls you to respond. You know, I encourage, you know, you mentioned, you know, how we raise our children. Yeah. You know, the act of how we raise our children is essential to this. And it may be out on the streets, and it may be in the voting booth, and it may be, you know, in our apartment buildings, or you know, in so many different ways, it's going to play out individually. But
It does change. I mean, you can look at someone like our Param Guru, Prabhupada, who came to the West. What did he do? He just sat around, chanted. That influenced me. It made me look for spiritual truths, and from that spiritual truths, I got into vegetarianism. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't got. That was a real catalyst for me getting into vegetarianism, learning how to cook vegetarian food. Think of these things that, okay, we're spirit. This is how we are connected. We're connected through spirit. So I don't just want equality among humans. I actually want to see everything as a citizen, every living being as a citizen. So in one sense, it appears completely disconnected. What the hell does this have to do with our real issues? This is the core of the real issues, or else we're just, you know, Prabhupada would say that, blowing on a boil. Yeah. You get a boil, which is manifest, it hurts, and you blow on it and it cools it down, but it's not lancing it. It's not getting to the root of it. Our spirituality is getting to the root. It's watering the root to fulfill all those leaves on the tree. Doesn't mean it won't manifest in sometimes getting in the face, making a physical protest, hitting the streets, but it also is how I raise the kids. Also how I treat my neighbor. And that's why you hear these things again and again come out through history. You got to love your neighbor. You got to forgive your enemies. You've got to extend a hand. You got to let go of anger, envy. These are the things that are plaguing everybody's heart. And we have to make sure it doesn't result to our own corruption of our heart. Because Maya's got a lot of tricks to keep us in illusion.
All right. So shall we then now immerse ourselves in Bhagavatam?
Yes. Take a bath. They call it a bath for the mind, right? Isn't that Henry David Thoreau? He said the Bhagavad Gita was like a bath.
My intellect.
I bathe my intellect.
Yeah.
Where is we? All right. All right. So we're on this great chapter, which makes no sense for an American-speaking person. Dhritarashtra quits home. What does that mean? It means he leaves home. We're talking about the evil. Evil. Could you call Dhritarashtra evil? Is it safe to say he's evil?
Evil, we all got a little evil in us, right? I think he's commonly referred to as the blind king, and not just blind materially, but blind spiritually. So maybe that's a little softer than saying he was straight out evil. But whereas Duryodhana, we would say straight out evil, right?
Right. And we are on verse. What verse are we on, Prabhu?
We are in Canto 1, Chapter 13, Text 16.
Text 16. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. No, did we do that? We already did that.
Narayanam Namaskar.
Narayanam Namaskrityandaram Shaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord, Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnanatamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, reading from text 16.
Sorry, I don't think we read 15 yesterday. I think we're on 15.
Reading from 15.
Sorry.
It's okay, Mara. How are you, Mara? As long as Vidura played the part of a Sudra being cursed by Manduka Muni, Aryama officiated the post of Yamaraj to punish those who committed sinful acts.
It's actually, there's a long story there, but in his previous birth, Vidura was Yamaraj. Yeah.
Which,
Um,
it's a long story.
it's a,
It's a long story. But we made our point yesterday. Vidura, who's considered of like not from a high family, was actually the most exalted one. He was respected by everybody in the kingdom. He was one of the elders, one of the leaders. Very relevant, actually, point, because there are some people I was going to say America. You see this a lot in India. You see people, it's not by their birth because they have a lower birth. In Vaishnav tradition, it doesn't matter what birth you have. Americans get that because we understand, like we have a whole culture of we came up from nothing. You know, my grandfather was, a street sweeper, truthfully, and we came up. And so there's this idea of we can make ourselves better. It's part of like the American dream and built into the American narrative. But in India, there's there's like these rigid castes. But in Vaishnav culture, the worship of Vishnu, the worship of Krishna, the idea is that it is not by your birth. It is by your qualification that you can become an evolved person, even a guru. I think we're going to touch verses like that today. And that's why you would have some people that would say, well, Raghunath Swami could not be a guru. He was born American. He's born outside the culture. We don't accept that. If you live like a transcendentalist, by your behavior, by your thoughts, by your speech, by your actions, then you become qualified. It's got nothing to do with your birth. Your birth can help you, can assist you, just like if I was born into a family of doctors, they can help me get into med school, help me with tricks of the trade. Doctor tricks. I don't know what doctor tricks are. But it is actually by our qualification. So Vidura was incredibly qualified, and therefore he is worshipped in the Bhagavatam as well as a leader. Having won his kingdom and observed the birth of one grandson competent to continue the noble tradition of his family, Maharaj Yudhisthira reigned peacefully and enjoyed uncommon opulence in cooperation with his younger brothers, who were all expert administrators to the common people. Text 17. Insurmountable. Oh, did you say something?
no,
Okay, there's a chicken outside. I thought it was you. I thought you said cock.
I sound like a chicken to you.
I thought you said quack. Text 17. This is a big one. Insurmountable eternal time imperceptibly overcomes those who are too much attached to family affairs and are always engrossed in their thought.
Whoa. You want to read the commentary to that one?
Let me read that again. That's like a very, very, it goes from like kingdoms and blah, 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 and the queen and the blah, and insurmountable eternal time imperceptibly overcomes those who are too much attached to family affairs and are always engrossed in their thought.
So this is going to be part of the message that Vidura is about to share with Dhritarashtra.
Right. So there's a reason this is said right now.
Dhritarashtra's lazing away his final days.
You can't be lazy.
Vidura's coming to say, hey, time is slipping away, and you really need to get focused on the goal.
I am now happy, is the purport.
Okay, so I was glad you feel happy.
I am now happy. No, this is a purport. Purport, I am now happy. I have everything in order. My bank balance is quite enough. I can now give my children enough estate. I am now successful. Oh, these poor beggar sannyasis, like these spiritual mendicants. They depend on God, but they come beg from me. Therefore, I am more than the supreme God. These are some thoughts which engross the insanely attached householder who is blind to the passing of eternal time. Our duration of life is measured, and no one is able to enhance it, even by a second, against the scheduled time ordained by the supreme will. Really? Even if I take superfoods?
That won't help.
Goji berries will not help. What? I've been lied to. Either this is lying or the superfood salesmen are lying to me. Our duration of life is measured, and no one is able to enhance it even by a second against the scheduled time ordained by the supreme will. So, do you remember that there was a famous jogger who wrote Jim Fixx, who wrote a book called Running in the 70s?
Vaguely, yeah.
And he was like, it was about when running took off, and everyone was like, yes, running, we got to start running. And everyone started running. It became a big thing. And then he dropped dead. He was like quintessential health. He was like the embodiment of health. And he dropped dead. And I don't know. Maybe Mara, look up why he died, please.
He
Jim
died
Fixx,
jogging.
2X.
Scott says.
Died. Right.
Heart attack.
Are you speculating? That's how.
Well,
Yeah,
people
that's
are
what the
sharing this.
tabloid
Tom
says.
says heart attack.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Such
Using
valuable
speculation.
Yeah, I thought you were speculating. I thought I caught you speculating. Such valuable time, especially for the human being, should be cautiously spent, because even a second passed away imperceptibly cannot be replaced. Even in exchange for thousands of golden coins amassed by hard labor. Can't buy that moment back. Every second of human life is meant for making an ultimate solution to the problems of life. Repetition of birth and death and revolving in the cycle of 8,400,000 species, different species of life. Maybe we should talk about that, because we know what that is, but maybe if you're new to the show, this is, you want to explain this?
8,004,000 different species.
Yeah, the Vedic concept of evolution.
Well, I mean, it's different than the evolution, the way we normally use the term, but this somewhere, I don't know if it's in the Puranas, maybe the Upanishads, but there's a mention of 8,400,000 different species of life. And so, of course, it always depends on how you categorize it, right? But that one way to categorize it is you come to this number, 8,400,000. And that, there's the different levels. There's the aquatics, and then there's the ones that are walking on Earth, and there's the insects, and there's the mammals, and there's different human species as well. And we were talking about the grays yesterday. Maybe they fit in there somewhere. On different planets, there'd be different levels of life. And so here it's just Prabhupada's just referring to it as in, hey, this is the problem of life. I'm wasting my time and I'm not solving the problem, which is that I'm being born and I'm dying again. And I'm entering into different forms, different bodies in which I suffer. And among them, I might travel through quite a few of the 8,400,000.
So the soul gets a different body and they evolve to the next. There's actually a hierarchy of species.
Yeah.
And then you evolve, and then what is it?
Then when the idea is that therefore the human birth is so essential, right?
Because you're acting on instinct. That's it. Because you're acting on instinct purely for the most part. Does that make sense? Is that redundant?
Well, in other words, that you, as an animal, you don't have the capacity to ask the most important questions in life and build a determination to practice yoga, to overcome, your bondage.
Therefore, you're not getting. Sorry.
Well, so if you have, if you take, if one were to look at their entire journey, how, you get this rare opportunity of human life, and every second, becomes important. And if you take that, it's, say you were to live 100 years and say, well, if you sleep 8 hours a night every night, well, now you just lost 1/3 of it. So now you're down to, 66 years, right? And then you take how much time you have to spend, just taking care of your body and doing this and doing that. Now you've limited it down to now how many years do you got? Most of your youth, you just kind of waste away, without any genuine, spiritual, progress or effort. So, okay, you can throw out the first how many years, and what do you have left? you know, how precious those moments are.
What have I done with my life?
Oh my God, what have I done?
What have I done? Stop shaving. What else can I cut out? Stop shaving. Stop brushing my teeth. Stop changing my clothes.
No, that's not what it's, that's not the point. But take every moment and infuse it with, so that's why Vidura's coming back and he's saying to Dhritarashtra, right now, you're at the very end.
This
And
is it.
even that you're wasting, you know?
Yeah, you're wasting the very end of your life. And we've gone through all these species of life just to get to this human life. In this human life, you've been surrounded by great souls and you've made a lot of bad choices.
Mm.
What are you going to do? And this is supposed to give us an impetus to take our life a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
What am I doing here? Am I working the job I want to work? Am I living the dream? Am I living how I'm supposed to live? And a lot of us are maybe not. Maybe a lot of us are not. We're think, well, someday I'm going to let go of this. I'm going to get to this point economically. And then I'm going to start to live. Live today. Today's the day to start living. Rethink it, because tomorrow may not be there.
I remember hearing a story where it was said that Prabhupada was seeing, you know, he used to take a walk every morning. And one time they were passing a golf course and he was watching in America, and he was watching old men play golf. And he actually began to cry.
I thought that was bocce ball. I thought they were playing bocce.
That's your Italian thing coming out.
No, that was the story. But he was crying. I heard that. That's a great story. He was crying because he feels like they're wasting. Here they are, a bunch of old men, and they're just wasting their life. This is the time.
And he had come from Vrindavan, right? Where you see old men using every second to go deep into their spiritual life, you know, reading Bhagavatam, chanting, you know, bathing in the holy rivers, meditating, you know, like really, as I approach that final, I want my heart to be entirely pure. I want to let go of all my material attachments. I just want to radiate divine love with nothing else. And those final moments are ticking away, and you're out on the golf course just trying to forget, you know, just losing
Forget
touch
the
with what's
inevitable.
important. And so he felt that compassion, you know. So in a similar way, Vidura is returning to his brother now and said, "Hey, don't waste this last time." You know, he's coming from pilgrimage himself. He's walking back in from Hardwar and saying, you know, in one sense, you know, as a king, he had lived that political life all this time. And what to speak of now, where he's not even active, you know, he has no political responsibility, and he's just kind of wasting those last moments away. So he's come to give him that reminder, to wake him up. You know, sometimes we get woken up and we get a little, we don't want to hear it.
We don't want to hear it.
But this is some special gift that's being given to him in the form of Vidura. Come and say, come on, wake up. The words are going to be a little harsh.
Whistling past the graveyard, Todd Deckard writes.
Yeah.
I like that, whistling past the graveyard.
The words may be a little harsh, but it's a great gift that he's going to share now with his brother.
I will continue. The material body, which is subject to birth and death, disease and old age, is the cause of all sufferings of the living beings. Otherwise, the living being is eternal. He's never born, nor does he ever die. Foolish persons forget this problem. They do not know at all how to solve the problem of life, but become engrossed in temporary family affairs, not knowing that eternal time is passing away and imperceptibly, and that their measured duration of life is diminishing every second, without any solution to the big problem, namely repetition of birth and death, disease and old age. This is called illusion.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So we hear him say that he said they become engrossed in temporary family affairs. So as a family man yourself,
I'm out of here, man. I'm leaving today. I'm getting on my
Oh.
bicycle. I'm leaving this family. No. I mean, this is like, I mean, Prabhupada's speaking from a culture that's already sort of practicing some relative type of dharma. So that is their type of Maya. We're doing much worse over here. They got like broken families, performing all types of vice. But even Prabhupada's saying, even in this Sattvic family, you got to see it as not the whole picture. We are, I use the same thing again, but it's good. We love our family, but we can't possess them. I can't think this child is mine forever. My spouse is mine forever. And it's a little heartbreaking when the whole material world is heartbreaking. You know, my wife was saying in springtime when she sees the leaves start from the tree, she's like, it's so sad because I know those leaves are going to grow and I know they're going to fall off. You know, it's the whole mystery of the material world. It's sort of like you see the colors of a rainbow trout, right? It's so beautiful. How do you catch it? Well, you put a hook in its mouth and you catch it. Now I have the rainbow trout. Now you've just killed the rainbow trout. There's a beautiful peonies. I'm going to pluck it. I pluck it and it dies. The whole material world, as beautiful it is dying. And you try to capture it, because really what we want to do is we want to hold on to beauty. We want beauty to be eternal. We want a joy to be eternal. We want happiness to be eternal. And it's on the material plane, it is not. And therefore we are left like losing our mind or brokenhearted or sad, a sucker's bet. So we have to go to something more subtle. And that's why we're connecting with beauty on a subtle level. And that's why we're attracted to Krishna. He's so beautiful. He's so quite charming, right?
You know, when we're speaking,
this beauty you see on my face, that's temporary. I know I'm looking pretty beautiful. That's temporary.
When we were speaking with Moby the other day, he mentioned that, you know, he was looking at this Rolex watch in a window of some shop or something like that. And then he was looking at a tree.
Right.
And comparing the value of, you know, the comparative value, and where we lose touch with all we lose touch with our fascination of that tree, let's say, and we become fascinated by things that have such less value potentially. And like what you just said about like what Bridge said, you know, that's the thing, you know, it's like you look at that tree and oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, it's about to die. You know, it dies again and again. You know, it's born and it dies and it born and it dies and it born. I watched that cycle year by year. Again, it's just like that tree is there to share messages with you. You know, you can see it like that, right?
You know, I do a meditation, and it's like I do a meditation of my kids. My kids are small, my kids are charming, my kids are cute. And I do a meditation of them as adults.
Okay.
And it's tough. It's tough to see them as adults.
Is that where
they're
Rocco
not
with the mustache comes in?
That's the Rocco with the mustache. Yeah. My Rocco with the mustache meditation. Try this new meditation I'm working on. It's called Rocco with the mustache. You take your kids, you picture them older, and you picture them a little sort of like walk. You know, who knows what your kids are going to turn out to be like, but it's sort of like it's a reality. And when you look at child pictures, that's why we feel sentimental. But I find like pictures of family pictures are important because it makes you realize like, oh, the imperceptible passing of time. When you see a photo, it's perceivable. Oh, you were a little kid a moment ago. Now look at you. Then the mustache is coming. I'm waiting for the mustache. But it's important. It's important to see. So this is as a householder myself, engrossed in it. We lose it all. We lose it all. I remember when we first moved into our home in California, it was in the San Fernando Valley. And we witnessed, and I really had like this transcendental sort of like realization. There was a couple there that were in their 90s moving out. We were moving in, they were moving out. We were the young family, we had 4 little kids, and they were the people who had been there when that house was built.
Yeah.
And they're packing all their stuff and they're putting it in crates and they're moving to a condo in Denver near their son, and all the stuff that they're packing up, their life, it's over. They're never going to unpack that. That's going to be auctioned out, thrown away. That's life.
That day is going to come
That day is going
for
to
us
come
all.
where we're packing our stuff in crates that no one even cares about the junk in our crates. Our kids will go through it, throw most of it out. Old, photo albums, get rid of them, maybe hang on to some. And it's there for all of us. And so if I stay in that material consciousness, then imperceptible time robs us of our life. And so it is important to have focus of my eternal self. I have a spiritual identity. I mean, I'm looking at faces on the screen right now that I've known for 30 years. When we were, I was talking to Henry the other day. I knew Henry when he was like 32. That was like, and I was 22. Or Paramananda when we were 15. Or Louis when he was like, whatever, 17, 18. So it's sort of like you, Kaustubha. And it's hard to believe, like, oh, I get it. I'm 54. I'm the old guy now. And it's only a matter of time. So I have to keep my spiritual identity at the forefront of my mind. What do you think?
I think it's a
now
great point.
Now I'm depressed.
But the other thing I want to mention, the other thing I want to mention is that when this Shastra, when these books, they talk about like being engrossed in family life, it's not saying that we shouldn't care for our family or love our family. But the way that I understand it, it's kind of like because it was such a more of a pious culture, that the equivalent we would say is you get engrossed in whatever, sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
That's where our culture searches for its pleasures, its happiness.
Right.
Whereas in this culture, that happiness was found in the pleasures of family life. And that one will get completely lost in that. As you're mentioning, thinking that this will go on forever, or not, at least not coming to terms with the fact that it won't. And then you just get lost in trying to derive pleasure from your family, from those family exchanges, which is actually a big step up from a lot of the places where people in our culture go for that.
I say it a lot, but we're meant to hear these analogies a lot. The cat comes in the form of death, and it takes the rat. And the rat's compared to a materialist. So if the cat is coming and grabs the neck of the rat, how does the rat feel? I'm losing everything. This is it. The rat has been living in the yard for a while, and every now and then the rat sees that nutty, gigantic cat. And he's thinking, that cat. I always got to hide from the cat. Every day he's trying to escape that cat. And then one day, when he least expects it, yes, cat's got him by the neck. And what is the rat thinking? This is it. This is my greatest fear has come right now. Now they say the cat of death also comes for the kitten. But how does a kitten feel when grabbed by the nape? That's the nape, right, Mara?
Yeah.
The nape of the neck?
The nape of the neck. How does the kitten feel when the mother cat grabs, right? So when death comes for a person who's dedicated their life to spirit, they understand, I'm not dying. None of these things, I've developed a detachment from all these things that we really get attached to. What do we get attached to in this world? Our family. We love them. If I love them, but understand I can't possess them, and I've cultivated that. If I love my house, but I realize I'm going to eventually have to give up this house. They're going to pack this stuff up in crates. It's not mine. It was never mine. All my stuff, my motorcycle, my car, all these things that we have attachments to, they're not yours. And when you really cultivate that from childhood, or at least from right now, and make that part of your realization, when the cat of death grabs you by the neck, you're like the kitten. And the kitten is thinking, mama. That's how we feel. We feel, the anxiety is gone. You feel contained. You feel loved. It's a different type of leaving your body. And it's a different type of living in this world also. There's just anxiety if I think this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. Because the material world itself will start to prune these things away from us. You might have a child that just says, I'm not interested in you anymore. You might have a lover that says, I'm over you. Surprise, I've had another lover all these years. or you might lose your home. So we're cultivating love with detachment, and it's a very, very delicate art.
You know, I watched a man die once, Raghunath. When I was a kid. I was like 17 or 18. And I was riding my bike up. I was at Park Avenue South. Me and my friend were both riding our bikes. And as we approached one intersection, there's these sirens, and a car sped through the intersection, tried to turn the corner, and crashed into a lamppost. And then two men ran out of that car, and they ran into a store, and they were being chased by the police.
Oh, they were bad guys?
I didn't say they were bad, but I said they're being chased by the police.
They're bad guys. I mean, it was like a cop and robber chase.
Actually, I read about this in the newspaper.
You found out later.
The next day or whatever. Yeah. So they had just robbed a welfare, like the safe of a welfare hotel. And they were making their escape. And obviously the plans fell apart almost like immediately, because it was just a half a block away that they made the robbery. So they turned the corner and the car crashed. And then, not knowing what to do, they ran out. They had guns. And my friend and I, you know how Park Avenue South has got these big like planters?
Yeah.
And so we just ducked underneath the planter and watched this play out in front of us, just like about, just at the sidewalk. So just, 30 feet away or whatever. And obviously they made a mistake running into the store because there's no way out.
Yeah.
And they quickly realized that and ran out, but the cops were there. And one of them managed to escape around the block, but they caught him later. That's what I read in the newspaper. But what I saw was one of them run out with his gun. And I looked in his face.
Were you close to him?
Well, we were half, like Park Avenue, like what, 3 lanes away. He was on the sidewalk and I was in the middle of Park Avenue.
Oh, you're really close.
Yeah, very close. So I really saw his face.
You saw his face and you saw him with a gun. Were you scared? Were you hiding? You're on your bicycle?
I was just fascinated by it.
Right.
We put the bikes down and we ducked. When I say planters, Park Avenue has these massive
planters.
Yeah. So we were ducked underneath that. But I remember this profoundly. It was almost like mystical in the sense that when he came running out and I looked at his face, what I felt what he was feeling. And that was that it all came to this, that this is where it ends.
This is it.
And that there's in a sense of very deep disappointment almost like in the meaningless of it all. And then I watched him get shot and killed. But I really felt somehow, this was before I had any kind of spiritual,
right. Just seeing a murder. Just seeing a.
But I really perceived in his heart the desperation and the just like, I'm trying to think of the right word, but just like that in the end, that this is all that came of it. And then his life was gone. Right. And I think about that moment a lot, and like, that we were all going to come to, you pack up your house, but when you do it for the last time,
it's the last time
I'm going away to die now. Right. I'm going away to die. These are the last, if we live a relatively long, if we don't die of some unnatural causes early or something like that, then we're all going to face that. You and I, it's funny because like we're 54 right now. So you think, well, 10 years, we're 64, I know. And 20 years, we're 74. You don't necessarily even make it that far.
No, we don't make it. My dad died at 64.
Yeah.
If I die, and his dad died younger.
Yeah.
Justin Ruckus just said, hey, Raghunath, if you got like 40 years, no way. If four, are you kidding me?
So that time's going to come. We can't waste a minute. We can't waste a minute.
Good morning, everyone.
Right, plays a little music for us, Raghunath. I hope you got that thing queued up.
I got it queued up. We got to get out of here quick. We got things to do.
There we go.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. I love doing this show, Kaustubha. I want you to know that.
Me
I love waking up, doing this. Me and Kaustubha have known each other for so long. We've even done stuff. We've been with each other all over the world. We've camped out in India under tents, under the stars in Bengal. But we never really did something like this together. I feel closer to him than ever. Mara, thanks so much. I'm sorry I had that bad dream about you, but I'm glad you got to go to the satsang in the dream. Thanks for everybody joining us on Spotify and Stitcher and Apple Podcasts. Please give us a 5-star review. If you didn't do that, that's something you can do today that helps us out. Thanks to everybody also joining us on Zoom. If you want to join Zoom, please join. Email Mara, or if you have a question for Question Day, which comes up on Saturday, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And we are having a Wisdom of the Sages party on Patreon. If you want to join that party, we are setting up yoga classes starting next week with Bobby Marchand, Paramananda, and Kumi. 2 morning classes, 10 a.m. in the morning, and Kumi's going to do an evening class. And we're going to have classes every week, which
Nice.
I'm excited about. We're also got our Bhakti recovery group going. So check out the patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. We're trying to create a village here. So thanks to everybody for being part of it. It's by community. We support each other. We buoy each other. Thanks for lifting me up, everybody. Let's dance!
Hey, you know what today is, Raghunath?
Yes, I do. It's Nirjal, which means nine nicked. Nehi. Nehi. Pani nehi. No water. There's no water. This was the one Pandava, the big strong guy who can never follow fasting days. So Krishna said, one day a year, you do a complete fast, and it will make up for all the fasting days you should. So I'm going for it today. Are you?
No, I got too much service to do, but I'll.
I'm not going to say I'm going to make it, but I'm going for it. Mara?
I drank water already today.
You already drank water. Who's in this? I'm going to try it.
Look at this, Raghunath.
You're already drinking the water. You see, I'm not drinking anything today.